Happy politics, and welcome back after a week off to your favorite BC politics podcast. This is BC Poly Hot Stove. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Orca, and I'm joined, as you can tell from my voice, this is a good thing, in a socially distant manner by...
It's Jordan Bateman, Vice President Communications, Independent Contractors and Businesses Association. And Maclean, you sound rough.
Yes, this is my Kathleen Turner voice. I am homesick with my kid. And yes, because the obvious question, we've both been tested twice. All 4 tests were negative. But yeah, it doesn't sound great. And so I was intending to be back at the legislature this week. I will spare my friends and colleagues having to make the good to see you face if they hear my voice. So, hello from afar. Hope to see you next week.
Yes, no, that's wise. Hey, last week I went to my first big event again. BuildX, the construction trade show, was on. First time in 2 years at the Convention Center in Vancouver. And I would say crowds are probably about 30% less than what they used to be 2 years ago, or what they were 2 years ago. But Maclean, the conversations that were had, better than ever. People excited to talk, excited to see each other once again. And I got to tell you, maybe 15% of the crowd masked, maybe. Not many masks in the crowd. People felt very comfortable. It felt normal, dare I say.
Wow. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. The 15% number, I'm just surprised given all the anecdotal evidence we see all the time on Twitter, especially in downtown Toronto. Yep. But, I mean, everybody's experience is different.
Yeah, I think you're on the island. I think obviously an older population, maybe a little bit more sensitive to this. This is a construction trade show. These are folks who have been working throughout the pandemic, side by side with coworkers and wearing masks, when appropriate and not when not. And it was very interesting. Most of the people working the show were masked. I suspect that was a mandate from the convention center. I don't know, but it seems like it probably was. But yeah, no masks. And here's the other thing: trade show, obviously, you have lots of giveaways. No one was giving away masks, which I found heartening as well, as someone who has, I think, ordered 4 runs of ICBA masks and have sworn to myself that I don't want to do another. Please, just let's finish COVID off so I don't have to order another run of masks.
Well, I can certainly understand that. I will be wearing a mask if I have to leave the house today, and I'm waving at my son. Hello, I can't talk right now. You're fine. Sorry. This week, Jordan, if my texts, DMs, mentions, and anything else or anything to go by, a ripple through the usually still waters of BC politics, the Premier, in a response to a series of questions from the BC Liberals about, affordability issues, said, as part of a longer answer, I don't understand the affordability stuff. The context was he was saying he doesn't understand where it's coming from them, the BC Liberals, because he doesn't believe they have any credibility on the file. But the line is the line, and welcome to politics. Once you've said something, it's commentable. I tweeted something in real time to the effect of, I think that's a line the Premier will wish he had back, which I very much stand by. The larger context is fine, but it doesn't matter because, look, here's the point I made to one of them today. If your point is that the BC Liberals can't talk about affordability because of nothing went perfectly in the 2000s, if that's your point, what do you think is happening right now? What is the track record being created right now? We are in an acknowledged affordability crisis. If you're saying that only we, the government, have the credibility to talk about affordability, look around. This is not the point that I would make.
Welcome to Blendertown, Population John. Maclean, many thoughts cascade through my mind.
I suspect you would have some.
I don't understand this affordability stuff, as Horgan said. I thought to myself, yeah, here's a guy who really doesn't understand this affordability stuff. I mean, he did just give himself a $30,000 a year raise.
True.
He lives in a bubble where he hasn't probably filled up his own car in quite some time. Maybe he has. I'm not sure he's up to date on what the cost of renting a house in his community is, or renting a one-bedroom. Probably not there. Look, you're the Premier of British Columbia. You're insulated from this stuff. Christie got stuck in the bubble. One of the great I would argue, one of the great retail politicians of her generation. She seemed out of touch by the end of it. The bubble is real. The bubble is real. It's bad enough being in the island bubble, let alone the Victoria bubble, and then you're in the political Victoria bubble. Woof, that's a tight squeeze. I thought of I was going to say the late great Andrew Wilkinson, but he was not late. I thought of Andrew Wilkinson blundering into, renting's just a wacky time of life, which was part of there was more context around that than just a random one-off term, but the NDP didn't let him live down that context. The NDP repeated that over and 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 over again. I don't understand this affordability stuff. If I were the BC Liberals today in QP, I would stand up with my affordability questions and I would start them all the same way. Mr. Speaker, the Premier said this week that he doesn't understand this affordability stuff, and that does seem clear to us. I'm hoping Minister or the Minister for Housing might be able to answer this question, XYZ question.
Yeah.
I would, every time I brought up affordability, I would remind the Premier of that quote. Like, it was Horgan as Hulk Horgan, not Premier Dad. Now, not in the fact that he was angry, but he was taunting them back. He was, firing, and he was, shooting from the lip, and he wasn't the jovial, fun Premier Dad that he likes to paint or that we like to pretend exists. This was more Hulk Horgan in the house, lashing back, and he blundered. There's no other way to put it. That's a blunder. It's one that I hope the BC Liberals hang around his neck for a long time to come. He keeps bringing up Kevin Falcon, like this guy, Falcon, talk about not understanding affordability stuff. Falcon lives rent-free in John Horgan's head these days. Like, he's not having to pay a cent to live there. The guy's not even in the legislature yet, and it's like all Horgan can talk about is Kevin Falcon. It's an interesting little turn of events, and I, for one, I'm here for it. I even made a GIF of it. That's how excited I am.
Well, if you made a GIF of it, you're excited. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Andrew Wilkinson wacky times thing, and that's actually, I think, a pretty good comparison.
Well, thank you.
In that there was a larger context. He was talking very specifically about his own experience. That was a wacky time in his life, and I'm sure it was. I have no reason to doubt that. But the NDP grabbed onto what was a malapropism and took full advantage. And welcome to politics. That is exactly what we're going to see in real time now. The Premier said what he said. Yes, the context is there, but A, I don't think it's very good context, and B, it doesn't matter. He said it. It's very much, as I told somebody who was complaining to me yesterday, look, it's not my fault that the Premier said this. I stand by my reaction that I'm sure he wishes he had it back because it very much appears that way. And look, you're going to see that line on billboards. You just are. How have you been in government 6 years and not understand this?
Yeah, no, exactly. And listen, it's thin skin. Everyone has their team, and they got to protect the team. And especially the ones who are being paid by the Premier's office. Of course, they're going to be lashing out about this and try and push back. But in the moment, watching the clip, Horgan knew immediately. Oh shit, really? Sorry, earmuffs, kids. You could just see it across the face, and then he immediately pivoted, no, hang on, I mean it in the and but he said it. I don't understand this affordability stuff. It's 6 words that the BC Liberals should plaster everywhere, and use it again and again as a preface to every question about affordability. Listen, there is no bigger issue in British Columbia today than affordability. It's bigger than COVID. Yeah. It's bigger than the opioid crisis. It's bigger than every other issue because it affects virtually everyone. If you're Chip Wilson, I guess maybe it doesn't affect you. But, and maybe, but everyone else is thinking about this. It's income tax time. Everyone's doing their income taxes. You're like, holy smokes, I sent a lot of money to government, and isn't it nice I'm getting a refund, but the refund's already spoken for in higher gas prices, higher this, higher that, higher that. It just showed, another little example of how being in the bubble, you get a little bit out of touch with what's going on. Honestly, the normal humans I talk to, everyone is talking about affordability. And it used to be affordability was a kind of term that we use around housing. Not anymore. It's around food. It's around food. It's around supplies. It's around clothes for kids. It's everywhere. and it's going to be around property tax time. This is a big issue. It's not going away. And John Horgan made very specific promises as an opposition leader and in his first term. Cell phone bills. If I were the BC Liberals, I'd be asking how that cell phone bill reduction plan is coming, because I'm sure they're right on it. The renter's rebate was promised and no delivery there. So there's lots of little places to poke them and maybe get another. This comment, I mean, it's 6 words. We know the BC Liberals will use it. At least I hope they will. Did it flicker across press row's radar? Like, I know you saw it. I've seen a couple of pieces since, although not really on affordability. So, Yvonne Palmer hasn't had a chance to really kind of lace it in yet. Do you think it triggered anything with the media?
I mean, we were comparing it with the wacky timeline. Sorry, the wacky time quote. We all live in a wacky timeline. But that, I think, caused more ripples in real time. That said, I think that this line will come back to bite. And part of the reason why it didn't see more ripples in real time is the NDP were also, and we're going to talk about this, introducing a couple bills this week, one of which we're going to talk about. And those tended to swallow up more of the oxygen. So I will remind you, and you can hear in my voice, I'm not actually in the legislature this week, and you're welcome. But my impression was the Wilkinson wacky timeline made more ripples in the moment, but I think that this one will actually last longer. If only because the Wilkinson one was a personal observation, and as you've mentioned, the affordability crisis is happening now to absolutely everyone. Are all these issues the fault of the provincial government? No. But that doesn't matter, because if you're saying you don't understand it, then you're showing that you're not recognizing that it's happening. I don't think John Horgan is responsible for the price of grapes going up. But when we're talking about things like rents, mortgages, transit just became more expensive. These are directly under the control of the provincial government. And so when affordability is becoming an issue across the board on all fronts, of course there's going to be focus put on those things that are under the provincial government's thumb.
Yeah. And he's also raising taxes on Friday by raising the carbon tax.
That's true.
And he can blame it on Trudeau all he wants. The fact is he's triggered it. So that's occurring as well. I think where this is interesting is it's clear the affordability stuff is starting to hurt him. They do not have a good message on it. They rolled out this fake gas tax rebate, which is actually a rebate to ICBC drivers who've overpaid. It got very little traction. I thought, we've seen Palmer, Shaw, even Keith Baldry, all those folks come out and say this was nothing. Like this was. All that talk, all that build up for some sort of affordability announcement, and you're refunding a pittance, really, not even a full tank of gas for a minivan. It's starting to add up. And this is the premier who got out there and said he was going to reduce cell phone costs. And when you play with that kind of populist messaging as far as costs go, you've set up a big level of expectation. And he'll say, well, we did get rid of bridge tolls. Great. For a small percentage of British Columbians, including myself at the time, that was a big deal. That was 5 or 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
5 years ago. We did, we got rid of MSP. Yeah, but then you added into healthcare, employer taxes, which means that less money for employers to spend on wages and benefits. So I'm not sure that's correct. So he'll go back to it. Much like Gordon Campbell would go back to, we cut income taxes 25%. Yeah, that was 2001, and it's not 2009. Like, what have you done for me?
Yeah, exactly.
So it weakens the overall message. It's manna from heaven for the BC Liberals. It's another sign to the party as well, and to caucus, that Falcon has come in with I'm not telling tales at school, but Falcon's come in with a very clear purpose in question period. He wants questions specifically on 2 or 3 different themes, over and over and over again, affordability being the number one theme. You can see it in the content of the questions, the way they're asked. Much more pointed than before, much more focused on the target-rich environment, and he's having these little wins along the way. Even when he strays from it, going to the Russia-Ukraine thing, we can't possibly take vodka off the shelves to, 3 hours later, vodka is coming off the shelves. And, like these are little wins that matter to a caucus when you're trying to rebuild unity, when you're trying to rebuild confidence, when you're trying to convince people to run. Like we have a plan, we're executing it, and we're making progress, and we're winning these little battles. Forcing Horgan into not even forcing, completely unforced error from Horgan, like I don't understand this affordability stuff, that goes a long way. And if I were the BC Liberals, I would be all over. I'd have little John Horgan caricatures with him like saying it and T-shirts and like I'd be pushing this all over the place. And it's still early days. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I mean, in the good old days before the pandemic, both of the two major parties, and if the Greens also did this, I apologize. I just can't think of any examples, and it wouldn't really be their style, is around Christmas, they would create little strange, I almost said wacky, gifts for the press gallery that would have, I think the NDP released a fake CD. There was no CD on it, but it was just like a track listing of, terrible things that the BC Liberals had done. The BC Liberals had T-shirts made up with John Horgan as Dr. No, which was a thing at the time. That kind of thing. These were always, journalists love swag. They love it. They get a kick out of it. Anything that makes them laugh is going to go over well. If that habit resumes this year, that will absolutely be the theme of the gifts given to the press gallery, I'm sure, by the BC Liberals. Probably not, less so the NDP.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think you're right. So, yeah, that's a lot there for 6 little words. But, again, question period, like start off every question with, we know the Premier doesn't understand this affordability stuff, but Minister, would the member stand up and explain X, Y, Z? Like, I think that's I think you have to repeat it enough times. I think every time BC Liberals are quoted or tweet about affordability for the next 2 months, they need to repeat it. It just needs to become part of the vernacular so that everyone in the province has heard those 6 words and tied them to John Horgan.
Yeah, and they'll keep repeating it because the surest way to gain points in question period is to fluster the other side and cause the temper to get the better of them. And annoying someone is the best way to do that.
Yes.
We mentioned, only because I'm going to move on to the next topic, only because my voice can only carry on for so long. We mentioned a bill introduced in the House this week. I encourage everyone to read Rob Shaw's piece on it in the Orca. Von Palmer wrote about it as well. It apparently introduces a cooling off period in which someone who's going to buy a home can back out. That's kind of all we know. The bill is 2 pages long. All of the details, and I mean all of them, have been held to be determined by cabinet behind closed doors at a later date, much like the FOI thing. So what is it that's going to be debated? An esoteric general concept without any ability to ask specific details. Here's the thing, Jordan. I don't understand why the NDP would do this. It's just, it creates a narrative that undermines their claim to be the most transparent government in Canada. This is obviously transparently not transparent. It's just it's rubbing it in the face. The other thing is, what's the rush? Just if they're saying the details aren't ready yet, okay, we're here till June. Take a couple of weeks and put some of the details in. Why impose this cost on yourself? I don't get it. I really don't. I don't see the upside unless the details are so, I don't know, embarrassing, damning. I don't know. We don't know what they are. That it's worth the cost to do them later behind closed doors. But then what? I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I don't get it either. We talk about the affordability thing. The other building theme around this government is that they, hate transparency, hate openness. Like, they're the most closed shop in all of Canada. Look, debating laws in the House is important. Listen, we all know the NDP have a majority. We all know they're going to jam it through no matter what. Even the FOI law, they jam through using closure. Like, we get it. We know it's going to pass. But you debate it in the House for a few different reasons. Number one, what the ministers say and what the debates and questions bring up are instructive for bureaucrats who have to interpret the law and make the regulations going forward. It's
and
also
judges as well. If there's,
well, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
It's also helpful for future lawmakers who go back in time and be like, what was this thing about? Like, what were they trying to do? Oh, okay. And then, of course, the courts who have to interpret these things. Judges do go back and look at the debates and kind of see what the government's thinking at the time was and what the concerns were and the opposition expressed. Like, these are important parts of the democratic system. It's why you can't just do everything by executive order, even though that would be much more convenient for Horgan and Jeff Meggs and his folks. But so you have that. This is one of these bills that, I think most people, the devil's always in the details. Like, I don't sense a huge groundswell of opposition to a bill on like giving a 7-day rethink periods, if it is going to be 7 days. Now, if they're going to give 45 days or 7 hours.
That's it exactly.
That's where the devil is in the detail. Listen, I talked to a developer last night. He has built thousands of homes and condos, including a number of affordable housing projects, and partnered with agencies and whatnot and done it. He said, in theory, having kind of that rethink clause, if it was 7 days or less, makes sense. Like, that's not a bad thing. And he told me that about 30% of offers kind of fall through anyways. And which seemed high to me, given the current market. He said that's true. In the current market, maybe it's not 30%, but traditionally about 30% have fallen through, have rethought or fallen through. So here's a guy who's a developer who you would think would be opposed to this, and he's like, like in theory it's fine, but where are the details?
Exactly.
That's all they're asking for. So it's another example of a government that is hiding things from the public, doesn't want to. It's not even sausage making in public, because the sausage is made when we make the legislation. Rob's piece commented on, or Justin McElroy tweeted out, I've been asking about what their plan is to cool the housing market for months and been told to wait for this piece of legislation in the spring, and now we get this and it's not even done. And, there's disappointment there in that, like, you've been planning for this forever. Why not just tell us what's going on? But instead they'll keep it close to the vest and hide it. And I actually think that will, create more negative media in the long run.
Well, and I mean, when she was asked, being the finance minister, Selena Robinson, is this going to address affordability? And she was pretty upfront that actually, no, this isn't going to, reduce the cost of housing. It's about consumer protection.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, good, sure. But as you point out, it's tough to ask informed questions when it's, okay, well, is the cooling off period 24 hours? Is it 6 months? I'm sure it's somewhere in between there. I'm saying 6 months is a ridiculous thing, but the point is we don't know. It's a bit like, do you remember the proportional representation debate where we were asked to debate these systems and then people would ask questions like, well, how many MLAs will I have? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, then why are we talking about it now? Yes. Why are you wasting my time? Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So another example of a government that prefers secrecy and closed door. Now, here's it's offensive to me as, a Democratic watcher. It's offensive to me as a taxpayer and a citizen. I can only imagine being a backbench NDP MLA. Ooh, shudder. Ooh. Let's say I'm Rick Glumack, just to pick a guy out. I'm Rick Glumack, backbench MLA in a swing riding. And I'm sitting here going, well, there goes cabinet again, right? Like, making these decisions. I'm the one who has to, well, it's funny, John Horgan making the train seal clapping gesture at the BC Liberals during the affordability debate. I'm the one who has to train seal clap and put up my hand for this thing. But you're not even giving me the details. Like, you're not even telling us, like, what, like, talk about faith in cabinet, which most backbenchers don't have, because virtually every backbencher think they can do a better job than virtually, than 90% of cabinet can. Like, that's a lot to ask of a backbench.
I mean, I can tell you from being around governments in the past, that is exactly the dynamic that comes into play. It can be hard to defend a record that you have nothing to do with and probably secretly disagree with. I can't imagine if you gave I don't want to pick on anyone, but a lot of people who support the NDP a truth serum, they would say, yes, I'm fine with charging a fee for FOIs and not admitting that we had it until after the bill had been passed. I mean, no one thinks this is good practice. And so when you're asked these questions by constituents, well, why did you do this? I don't understand the upside for me as a voter. And you're kind of saying, well, yeah, it's better for this reason. And well, the reason we didn't have the details on the cooling off period were, wait, what's that behind you? It's just, why are you putting them in this position? This is not, again, I'm not picking on anyone. These are real situations that happen to MLAs on a day-to-day basis when they're back home. They're fair questions. And if there's no really good answer, what is the good answer for? Yeah. We don't have, just trust us. We'll come up with a good cooling off period later. Okay, well then introduce the bill then. This is really not hard.
Yeah, what's the number one thing MLAs get complained to? Oh, you're not representing me in Victoria. You're representing Victoria to me.
Yeah.
And so if you're Rick Glumac again, you're in Maple Ridge. You have hundreds, maybe thousands of condos going in where this cooling off period is going to be important. And, Rick, so what was the thought behind this? Okay, he'll give the 10-word talking point, but he doesn't have any depth to it. And that will come back to haunt him, for sure it will. And I just don't get it. Where I'm curious about this practice is it's happening more and more. So my question then is, let's take EB's much talked about future local government reforms, where essentially EB is going to make a bunch of laws and change public hearings to try to stamp out NIMBYism and, essentially try to fix Vancouver, but do it on a provincial scale.
Yeah.
If he doesn't come out with stuff, if it's all behind closed doors and, regulation and high-level principles and cabinet's going to think it out, he will be in an absolute, it's already going to be a war with UBCM and mayors and councils. It will be all-out, total war with these mayors and councillors. And I got to be honest with you, in a battle between a downtown Vancouver housing minister and the Chilliwack mayor, the Chilliwack mayor generally is going to get more of the benefit of the doubt from the people in Chilliwack than David Eby. There's more familiarity, more trust. You just know them better. And so I'm curious, how far are they going to push this new practice of weird legislation making? We for a long time, the business associations have been asking government to clarify something in their new sick leave act. Essentially, you get 5 days paid sick leave now in the province of British Columbia, but the act starts it on your start date, and then it refreshes every start date. So the complaint from business groups was, listen, first of all, that's hard to track, but let's say a guy starts November 1st, then I got to make sure that he's taken 5 days, up until that November 1st of the next year, and then he gets another 5 days, and so he could end up taking 10 days in 1 year. How do we handle that? Their solution, they came out this week with a clarification, a tweak. And the solution now is you get 5 days per calendar year, no matter what, which means that guy hired on November 1st gets 5 days from November 1st to December 31st, and then another 5 days the next year. No prorating, no discussion. And they're like, oh, aren't we great? We listen to the business community. But it's an example of where that's stuff that could have come out in debate, been discussed, and instead, they just sort of drop it on you. And they've actually made things kind of worse. And, now the business associations are scratching our heads going, okay, now we got to go back and re-educate them again on this. Come on. This is pretty simple. Prorate. Yeah. First year, you prorate it.
And the thing is if you're like most people who follow politics and you only really watch question period and you think, well, if it gets asked in QP, who cares? Nothing's going to happen. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in what they call committee stage bill debate, when it is, I encourage you to watch. It's much more buttoned down, usually, and a little more high level. And they, go through, well, what's the thinking here on this line? And what's the thinking here on this line? And who did you ask about this? And have you considered this? And sometimes amendments do come from that process, and they're usually good. I can think of a couple off the top of my head from different governments, including this one, who have said, okay, that actually is a good point, and we don't want to have to redo this again in 6 months. Yeah. And so that kind of stuff is so crucial. And again, you're right, skipping right past it in this case. If
the ledge is just a farce, if it's just going to be up to cabinet, premier's office to do things, why force them to go to Victoria and sit there? What's the point? Just get together once a year, pass 7 laws that you think are high-level things, and then let cabinet work the rest of the year to do it. it's farcical. It's not right. It takes away local representation. It doesn't give anyone the opportunity to speak in the process. And you're robbing, again, future bureaucrats, lawmakers, and courts from being able to understand exactly what government was thinking.
That's true. In the interest of making it to the end of this podcast with even this Kathleen Turner voice, I will ask you it's been 2 weeks. There is, I guess we're going to be in the middle of leadership races during the entire run of the show, because I don't think we've been outside one for a very long time now. There's obviously a federal Conservative leadership race. Is there anything that's happening behind the scenes that's worth pointing out or of interest?
Yeah, I'm convinced now Poilievre has this thing locked up. Judging by the crowds, crowds aren't everything in politics, but when one guy's drawing 1,000 people midday in Brampton, the home of Patrick Brown, and the other guys can't get 1,000 people in the room in a week combined. It's the thing was always, well, Poilievre's going to have a lot of support within the current membership. So Jean Charest and Patrick Brown are going to have to sign up new members. Mark Dalton as well, running inexplicably for leadership. Leslyn Lewis, another candidate. He's signing up new members. He's winning current members. They're a solid campaign. They don't make mistakes. All of their stuff is interesting and good. They wade into cryptocurrency.
That was fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I'm not a crypto guy. I know people who swear by it and people who hate it. But
even just going there,
yes.
And as a conservative politician who's the first to really go there, and again, I'm like you, I don't have any positive or negative comment to make there. I don't get it, and I will admit that right now. But the fact that a conservative politician is jumping in with both feet into the deep end on this is fascinating.
Yes, and crypto guys are like marathoners. That's all they talk about. How do you know someone did the Ironman triathlon? Just wait, they'll tell you. Cryptocurrency the same way. How do you know a guy's into crypto? Don't worry, they'll tell you. They'll tell you.
Well, it's a CrossFit, a vegan, and a crypto guy all walk into a bar.
Yes.
How do you know? It's the first thing they said.
Exactly. So, that's a passionate group of people, and it fits in perfectly with that, freedom-loving, slight mistrust of the system kind of guy or person. So that's good. Now, I will say this. Everyone I talked to in the Valley so far has been, Poilievre. A lot of interest in meeting him. Lots of interest in becoming part of that campaign. Ed Fast is a longtime Conservative MP in Abbotsford. As solid the guys you're going to get in the Conservative caucus. He came out for Jean Charest. And I was surprised by that, because that's the first person from the Valley I found who wasn't all over the Poilievre train. So I'm a little curious about that, and I know he's at, I think Mike Murray's a former candidate. He's come out for Charest as well. I'm a little, that gives me just a slight pause, but I just don't sense a lot of momentum around the Charest campaign. So it feels to me like the rank and file that I talk to, it's all Poilievre and lots of curiosity about him. So.
Yeah, I mean, this comparison you can only take so far, and I know less about the Conservative leadership race, but it kind of feels familiar to the BC Liberal leadership race in that there was a clear and immediately obvious frontrunner almost from the get-go. And they, unlike the last Conservative leadership race, the frontrunner is running a very well-organized, tight campaign. And it feels very similar. The lead feels prohibitive already. A million things can happen between now and whenever the vote is held. But you're right. I think a lot of people are watching this thinking it's already happened.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, to bridge out of that for a second. So Jenny Byrne, a longtime Harper organizer, is running the Poilievre campaign. She used to be on a great podcast called Curse of Politics with David Hurley and Scott Reed. She's taken a leave of absence to go run the Poilievre campaign, and they brought in Christy Clark as the new host. And oh my God, Maclean? It pains me to say this because you and I obviously are the greatest podcasters in British Columbia, but Christy is she's a natural. She is so flippin' good on that podcast. Standing up to two guys who clearly have a long-term relationship and have a lot of banter. She is in there throwing elbows, while passionately defending Western Canada, energy, oil and gas. I'm like, wow, it's. I mean, I remember her radio talk show, and she was great on that. But now she layers in, you talk about the confidence and supply agreement. Well, here's a person who tried to negotiate one and who was ousted because she couldn't. And it's a whole new layer. And I'm actually going to ask Chris for her, my boss, who was once Christy's principal secretary, got to ask for Christy's cell number because I got to send her a text and just compliment her because she is killing it. So the curse of politics. Don't listen to it with your kids. Lots of F-bombs, not from Christy, but from the two boys. But she's killing it, and it just reminds you of like the things Christy was good at. She was so damn good at, and it's been refreshing to hear her on there every week.
I have heard that show in the past, and you're right. It is sometimes better described as cursing about politics. Mm-hmm. But I've been meaning to listen to her episodes, but as someone who was around her a fair amount, that does not surprise me that she would take to this format like a duck to water. And also somebody who's largely kept her powder dry for the better part of 5 years now. Yeah. So there's a lot of recuperation and rejuvenation and pent-up energy and opinions to share.
Oof. I mean, look, if you hate Trudeau, you're going to love Christy Clark on this show. Like, she just shreds Trudeau. And because she's out of politics now for so long, and it's clear in her mind she's not going back in, she will give you little nuggets about her time, 2011 to 2017, that you're like, oh, interesting. Essentially, they were talking about Jason Kenney this morning, and, Kenney's fatal flaw, in her opinion, was he didn't chase all the crazies out when he had the chance of the party, and now they've all kind of coalesced and are bringing more crazies in. Now, decide whether or not that's true, that's beside the point. She's like, in 2013, I had to put up with the crazies for 2 years, but I darn sure made sure they didn't run again. And I was like, oh, who didn't run in 2013? Is his name George Abbott? Name names, Christy. She doesn't need to. We all know. But it's kind of funny, right? Like the people, and crazies to her, I think, meant like people who weren't on board with her particular program and what she had planned to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. She drops little nuggets like that. And for BC folks, you kind of go, that's an interesting way of remembering that. So it's well worth the listen.
Well, and that's a good thing for you to listen to after you're done with this show, which is pretty soon, because I'm not going to lie, this voice has got maybe like two more minutes in it before it completely falls apart.
When is Capital Direct coming back?
This Friday.
Okay.
Assuming I can talk. I'll be fine by Friday.
I mean, these poor people, a break from us and a break from the second best podcast in BC, Capital Direct, or whatever it's called. Very sad, but I'm glad you're coming back.
It was a very empty week.
Although, I got to say, it's gone down. Capital Direct's gone downhill since adding the Ferrier.
Why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
I like folks. The point of this show is for me to say things and to tweet things to make it as awkward as possible for Maclean to have to deal with other people. So
mission accomplished. I get along quite well with Jeffrey Ferrier. And,
JT.
It's a good show.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing Ferrier. Don't unleash your unnamed, numbered NDP Twitter trolls on me. I don't need them. I've already got them. Someone trolled me today, Maclean, and they've been on Twitter since 2010, and they had 16 followers. I'm like, imagine tweeting all those years, 12 years, and you're averaging 1.25 new followers a year. What are you doing? Have a word with yourself. Log off.
I mean, I have had a number of tweets in the last couple weeks where it's, just saying something terrible about me and my family. And,
I'm sorry about that. I should be better.
That's okay. And my sexual inclinations, if you like. Ooh. And you look at this, you look at the Twitter account, like, wow, who would say such a thing? And it's literally, they just signed up last month and they have literally 0 followers. And you're like,
Yes.
Gotcha. This happens all the time. Like, it's almost daily.
Well, I remember Baldry arguing with a guy, and I sent him a note. I'm like, Keith, this guy's 3 followers. Like,
what's the point? You can swat them aside and move on is what you can. But occasionally you get sucked in because you don't always look. And this looks like a credible. Oh no, 0 followers. They follow 11 people.
Yeah. So strange times. I think it's gonna get worse too because municipal elections this fall. So
that's true.
They all come out of the woodwork.
In the meantime, he's Jordan Bateman. Jeffrey, still love you. I'm Maclean K.
I was just teasing JT. Relax.
JF. JT's the Prime Minister.
No, JT Ferrier. It used to be his Twitter handle, wasn't it?
Oh, really? Okay, well...
Am I wrong? Maybe I'm feuding with the wrong Ferrier. Now I'm going to look it up.
Until then, until we solve this mystery, happy politics.